Democratic presidential candidate Elizabeth Warren says she will soon release a plan to fund her universal health care plan. The Massachusetts senator, whose campaign is selling T-shirts that say Warren has a plan for that, has been repeatedly pressed to explain how she will fund her Medicare for All proposal. Warren faces questions over whether it will raise taxes on the middle class. She has said it will reduce health care costs overall. By contrast, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, who's also proposing a universal Medicare for All bill, says his plan would eliminate health insurance premiums and almost all out-of-pocket costs. But he says he would compensate by raising taxes. Warren announced intentions to release the financing details about her plan during a town hall in Iowa yesterday.
The cheapest possible way to make sure that everyone gets the health care that they need is Medicare for All. And that's why I support Medicare for All. That's why I'm there. What I see, though, is that we need to talk about the cost. And I plan over the next few weeks to put out a plan that talks about specifically the cost of Medicare for All and specifically how we pay for it. But here's the promise I make to you and make every chance I get. And that is, I will not sign a bill into law that does not reduce the cost of health care for middle-class families.
CBSN political reporter Caitlin Huey-Burns joins me now from Des Moines, Iowa, where Warren just spoke. Hi, Caitlin. So up until now, Warren had not wavered in her answer to that question, which she repeatedly got, about raising taxes to pay for Medicare for All. So what do you take away from the fact that she will now offer up a more detailed explanation?
Well, I think it's been pretty telling over the past day that after her events, she has made the point when no voter has asked about it to say, look, I'm coming out with a Medicare for All policy that will be paid for. So she's been making a point to tease that out during her Iowa trip. And I think that comes as pressure has really been building. Whether the campaign says that's the reason or not, you just have to look at what we've seen over the past few days. We saw in the debate she was asked repeatedly last week in Ohio about how she would pay for her plan, whether it would include a tax hike on the middle class, as Bernie Sanders has said that it would, even though premiums would come down. She did not answer it then, and then you saw some of the more moderate candidates in the race really seize on that answer. Amy Klobuchar, Pete Buttigieg, even Michael Bennet going after Elizabeth Warren pretty hard still here in Iowa. So that pressure has certainly been building. Now, we just had a gaggle with Elizabeth Warren, and she said that she had always been trying to think of how to pay for this and had a plan in the works, but you can't not see that kind of pressure building having an effect on her policy.
Right. And Caitlin, as you said, this has been one of the few lines of attack Warren's rivals have been able to really sort of take against her. So do you expect when she finally does release these details to the public that those lines could shut off?
Well, we'll have to see what it exactly is. I actually asked her in the gaggle today, she put out a public school education plan that would be paid for by her 2-cent wealth tax. And I asked if given that money is going to that and some other programs, where is the money coming from for Medicare for All? And she wouldn't quite answer it. She just said a plan was coming. I could imagine that what we're looking at is Elizabeth Warren has been consistently on the rise, really even taking the lead in a place like Iowa. And then you have these other candidates who are trying to fight their way either back into the top tier or make their way advancing their campaign. And sorry, we're at a high school here, so one of the alarm bells just went off, getting some flashbacks. But so you have certainly seen these other candidates like Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar, who we were with yesterday, try to really seize on this moment to attack Warren, because she is seen by these candidates, at least, as a front runner.
And speaking with Amy Klobuchar and keeping on the topic of Elizabeth Warren, yesterday you interviewed the Minnesota senator about her attacks on Elizabeth Warren during last week's debate, and here's the clip of that.
So in that debate, you went pretty hard after Elizabeth Warren. You noted that plans are not the same as pipe dreams. But what evidence are you seeing on the ground that supports your theory of the case? Because we have seen Elizabeth Warren has been steadily on the rise, especially in a state like Iowa.
Sure, she has good support, and my support is growing. And I think what I've seen is there are people that are tired of the noise and nonsense and the extremes, and they're looking for someone who has their back. And they have a home with me because I believe my ideas are better ideas. They're different ideas, but they're better ideas. For instance, I don't want to trash Obamacare. I want to build on it with a nonprofit public option that would bring prices down. I think we should get 1- and 2-year degrees free, and then we should make it much easier to go to 4-year college by doubling the number of Pell Grants and doubling the amount. That's what I want to do. Her view is different. I just don't think we should be paying for college for rich kids and off of the taxpayers of this country. And I also don't think we should kick 149 million people off their current health insurance. That is a big difference. And Democratic voters are going to have to look at their two plans and decide what they like better.
So Caitlin, Klobuchar really seems to be defining herself as the middle-of-the-road candidate, and she seems to be, she seems to think that that's giving her some steam. So do her ideas, or do the more sort of radical ideas of the Warren and the Sanders set appear to be winning in the primary at this point?
I think that's really the heart of the primary right now, especially since you have Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden, at least here in Iowa, tied at the top. And so what you're seeing from someone like Klobuchar is a sense that either there's some weakening support for Joe Biden, who's seen as the more moderating force in this primary, and that there is some room really to grow if you are one of those candidates kind of fighting against the more progressive forces in the party. But they're trying to thread a little bit of a needle here by saying that, she supports a lot of progressive policies, but she's also talking about being practical. And so you get mixed reviews from voters depending on who they are supporting. We talked to some people at Amy Klobuchar's event who said that, yes, they're thinking that a more moderate candidate has a better chance of defeating Donald Trump and maybe winning back some of those voters that they lost in places like Iowa. Then you have others who were at Elizabeth Warren's event last night who told us that they want big ideas, they want big plans, they like that kind of energy that you're seeing. So I would stress, however, that I think this race still remains pretty fluid. We talked to a lot of voters who were still deciding between 4 or so candidates.
So when you describe, some of the voters who say they're supporting Klobuchar, you seem to describe candidates or voters who think she has the best chance of winning rather than they are so inspired by her. Is that the sense you're getting?
Yeah, it's really interesting because when we talk to voters, a lot of times they say, well, this is how I think other voters might behave. And so they're really thinking strategically this time around because, as we've talked about before, for them, defeating Donald Trump is the top priority. So that's kind of how they're viewing this primary season, focusing on kind of who can best defeat Donald Trump. Elizabeth Warren's answer is someone that has big structural change ideas, someone who inspires. Someone like Amy Klobuchar or Pete Buttigieg is talking about, practical things and getting things done. So we'll see if it's a kind of a head or the heart kind of who wins out.
All right, Caitlin, quickly, because over the weekend, Bernie Sanders held the largest campaign rally of the 2020 Democratic primary, which is significant. His campaign says he drew more than 25,000 attendees right here in New York City. So, Caitlin, what's your takeaway from that?
Well, I think the big takeaway from that was the endorsement from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who, although it wasn't surprising that she was endorsing Sanders because she supported him last time around, I think it was a really coveted endorsement for a lot of these candidates in this race because she represents kind of where maybe parts of the base of the party are younger, an energizing force in the party. So I think this is something that, at least at this point in time, gives him that kind of credential, that boost that he needed coming off that heart attack and being sidelined for a couple of days from the campaign.
I wonder how many of those young supporters wish AOC was running. All right, well, Caitlin Huey-Burns, thank you so much for your reporting. Great to see you.